friends and enemies, we are here. Dirty dozen, guys. We made it to 12 episodes of the podcast. We've seen a lot of surge in views and likes and just popularity soaring through the roof. If you guys have been here since day one, drop a comment below. Let us know you're one of our OGs. We appreciate you. All of your new ones, we appreciate you the same. Got a lot of exciting stuff coming. We're going to be, as you can probably tell by the way Chris and I are dressed today, we've got some wrestling content coming out in the very near future. It is WrestleMania week. Chris and I are excited for that. Lots to talk about in the world of wrestling, but other sports aren't sleeping either. Real quick, I do want to remind everybody, in case this is your first time, live stream. First time we are going live here on the channel will be for night one of the draft. That is Thursday. I think the draft starts at 8 p.m. We'll wait till we get a little bit closer to that time period to decide when we're actually going live. It might be a little earlier than that, just to kind of give everybody a chance to jump in there. Excited to see it. Guys, before we kind of get into our weekly sports content, how has your week been? Kind of what's been going on with you guys in your lives this week?
Up and down, broke a phone, replaced the phone. Nothing too special.
Kind of me, just same week in, week out. Doing the IT work during the week and podcasting on the weekends. So
Never too far from a computer.
Never. Pretty decent week though.
Good. Glad to hear it. Well, this is my favorite time of the year. We are getting closer and closer to the draft. There's a lot of excitement around that in my world. And it's kind of one of those things that the things that you think that you know can really be vanquished with any one single news clip. Somebody fails a drug test, somebody gets arrested. We saw that with Isaiah Bond, had turned himself in to the police this week. He's somebody that was once thought to be a first round pick at receiver, and now we don't know when he's going to be drafted. Very talented guy. I think he still will be. But the big news that came out yesterday was the starting quarterback for the New Orleans Saints, Derrick Carr, is dealing with a shoulder issue, and he is kind of contemplating his options, but surgery is one of those. And it seems like if he does go through with that procedure, he will miss all of 2025. This is obviously a very big blow to the Saints right here before the draft, because they have the 9th overall pick. And whereas quarterback was on the table for them, it could become more of a necessity moving forward, because I don't think what they saw from Jake Hayner and Spencer Rattler last year is going to give them a lot of confidence going into this upcoming season. So does a quarterback like Shedeur Sanders, who might have fallen further in the draft, does that fall now stop at 9? Does a team trade up ahead of the Saints to get him? What about a Jackson Dart, who might have been viewed as being taken in the 20s, now becomes a top 10 pick purely out of need? Obviously, this is kind of one of those things that can create huge ripples in the draft and really shake things up. Chris, I mean, I know you've kind of been following some of the draft stuff and you keep a close watch on the quarterbacks and their landing spots. What do you think about this with the Derrick Carr injury?
I've actually heard the same thing, as they were already thinking quarterback, but now they might jump at the chance to get a quarterback immediately. They've been put in a tough situation here. If the right quarterback's there, I think with the injury, and Carr's not a young guy anymore, so missing a whole season can put a damper on your career as a whole at this point in your career. So you got to start thinking about the future, and you got the number 9 pick. You might want to really start thinking about it.
Well, and Kellen Moore being the new head coach there, I mean, obviously he's an offensive-minded guy. You think he's going to want to bring in a quarterback that can run his offense anyway. So I know Brian really would love to see Aaron Rodgers sign with the Saints. No, he would not. Maybe just for the pass rusher that Atlanta takes at 15 to get a hold of him a couple of times a year. But the big thing now is, like I said, a Jackson Dart, a Shedeur Sanders. Does that now become a prime landing spot because of Kellen Moore needing a quarterback? But what do you think, Brian?
Well, kind of that's exactly what I was thinking, though, was, does that open up an Aaron Rodgers coming in? Obviously he's got 1 or 2 more years in the league. Some would say, I do not, but, do they bring him in to then get Carr healthy and bring him back in 2026? And also, does that bring in a huge learning potential for Rattler, who I still think is a pretty decent quarterback? He was, really good at South Carolina's, but does that with the whole with Aaron Rodgers not signing with the Steelers, does that kind of question, what's really going on, um, with that? And as far as I know, I haven't heard anything about Aaron Rodgers going or even them looking at it. But we'll have to see what the next couple of weeks leading up to the draft brings in. I don't know that they would take another or they would use their first round pick on that, knowing that it may be a short term thing, and Carr coming back in 2026. So I also don't know what their salary cap potentially looks like. Is the when they signed Carr, I don't remember what that deal was, but do they have enough left over to have signed a Aaron Rodgers and all the money that it's going to take, or Kirk Cousins for that fact? Do they have that much money to shell out in a 1 or 2 year deal for one of those quarterbacks? I don't know. It's kind
Well,
of
the answer with the Saints is always no, but yes. The Saints will go from having $40 million under the cap, or over the cap, I should say, where they're very much in the red. They have no money to spend, and then you'll see them announce the signing of like the best defensive player on the market. You're like, how do they keep doing this? But they have terrible cap management. They start every year in the hole. It seems like it's just one of those things where I don't think that they pay money to bring in another quarterback. I bring up Aaron Rodgers just as a joke. It's kind of a Brian hates Aaron Rodgers. I have to get that hate in there somehow. But I do think you bring in a rookie, and I'm not too familiar with the Carr contract situation, but I want to say he was kind of set to be their starter this year because of the money that he was owed. But if they bring in a Jackson Dart and he really takes to the Kellen Moore offense, they do really well this year. I don't see a reason why they would pay Carr to come back in 2026 if they've already got their new starter. Because I don't really think that the organization believes in Carr or is really married to him on a long term basis, but they had to let him play for the money that they were paying him anyway, at least until they get their own Michael Penix Jr. and heir apparent who is the best option on Sundays, because you see that with Atlanta. Kirk Cousins is making a good bit of money to ride the bench right now. And so we'll see how that goes, but it is a very interesting note as we get closer to the draft. More and more stuff like this is going to shake out, so we'll definitely be touching on it. But that was all I really had. Football, not a big football heavy episode this week. Uh, Biggest thing going on right now is the Masters. Brian, I know you would love to talk about that, so take the floor.
absolutely. It is a big week in golf. It always is every year. Uh, even if you're not a golf fan, everybody's heard of the Masters at one point or another. Being in the state of Georgia, it's all about it right now. Everywhere you go is green. So a lot of fun. Love seeing the spring flowers at if you've watched any of it, that course is just immaculate all the time. I would love to go one year, but it is insanely hard to get tickets. I believe they do a lottery format, so it's just luck of the draw whether you get in or get, you don't. You're watching it on TV like I do every year. Really, the leaderboard is not very surprising right now. You've got Rose, who is leading it at 8 under. I think I heard a funny fact with he has led the most days at the Masters, but has not necessarily, or I know he hasn't ever won a green jacket. So, I'd like to see him win it. That would be cool for him. One of my favorites is at the top of the leaderboard, which is Bryson DeChambeau sitting in second. McElroy is coming up. He had a okay day Thursday, a great day yesterday to find himself tied in third with some others, including Connor, who is obviously a really good golfer. Scotty Scheffler kind of just is riding kind of like he always does, sitting at tied for fifth, but that can change with him. He really seems to be one of those players that surges on Saturday and most notably on Sundays. So again, it's a lot of fun for me. This is a good weekend. Again, I'm a huge waste management fan, but also equally as big as the Masters and the U.S. Opens, all the big majors, because it does, in my mind, bring in the world's best. I get Scotty Scheffler is number one, but that's in the eyes of the PGA. But it also leaves out the Dustin Johnsons, the Bryson DeChambeau's, and the players of that caliber. So, um, honestly, I'd love to see Bryson win it. I followed him ever since college, where he kind of wasn't a huge name. Everybody knew he was a really good golfer, but then when he won the U.S. Open back several years ago, it just really came to the household name recognition. And if you've ever watched him, he's very very scientific in the way that he approaches the game, approaches his swing, um, and he's just a lot for me as a golf fan. He's a lot of fun to watch. So yeah, I think that's kind of all I've got on the Masters notes for now.
Well, I think I don't remember if it was you and I that were talking about it last week, or maybe it was even on the podcast itself. But one of the interesting things that I've seen thrown around is there are betting odds for a live player to win the Masters. And at the time, it wasn't a specific player that they were saying, but just what are the odds that a live player could come in and win the Masters? That was something that a lot of people were betting on. And to see Bryson sitting in second, just one stroke off the lead with Justin Rose there at the top is pretty exciting to see for those people who might have cashed out on that ticket.
I like seeing the live guys come in and playing well because when live first started, PJ kind of downplayed live. Oh, they don't have the quality of golfers that the PGA has, so on and so forth. And this kind of proves that wrong. Live has really good golfers in it, and arguably some of the world's best. It's just a different pay and structure and all that kind of stuff. But we won't get into the whole politics of it. But yeah, I'd love to see Bryson win it all. There's several that I'm kind of pulling for. Rose is another one just because he's never won one. And of course, I'm a huge McElroy fan. Came out hot. Everybody thought he was going to be the next Tiger and just win everywhere. And he just kind of has gotten on a cold streak, unfortunately, and hasn't really won in the past several years. So, maybe this is his breakout year. I know I mentioned it a couple of podcasts ago, him taking kind of not an easier schedule, but a lighter schedule, and hopes to have better performances in the tournaments that he showed up in. So, and honestly, with his performance over the past couple of days, that seems to be true, and good for him.
Yeah, Chris. I mean, I know you're not the biggest golf fan. Did you have any thoughts as far as Masters? It's kind of close to home with you being over in Savannah. Do you see a lot of, like, I guess, just pickup in traffic or something? People more in the area. I know that's more of an Augusta thing, but Savannah's really not that far away.
No, I really haven't noticed anything around here, anything. But yeah, if you are interested in the topic, we did share something on our Facebook page about I think it was Barstool Gambling. That if a live golfer could win the whole thing, who would it be? Go ahead and just leave us some comments on that or on this video, and let us know your thoughts on the odds of that happening.
Yeah, definitely. The Masters is the big topic of this weekend. Last weekend, the big topic that we haven't really had a chance to update on, as far as on camera goes, were the NCAA basketball championships. So we saw the women's basketball championship won by the Yukon Huskies. Chris got that right. Good for him. That bracket challenge worked out. kind of how we thought it might. Chris did win that bracket challenge, so congratulations to him. I finished in third, and Brian finished right behind me in fourth as far as in the overall standings of the challenge goes. And then on the men's side, saving us from a double Chris bracket win, the Florida Gators prevailed. That propelled Lucas onto the winner's circle, the first place on the podium. Brian finished in second on that one. I finished in third as well in that one, and then Chris finished in fourth. So we were 2, 3, 4, and 1, 3, 4 on those. So pretty cool to see all three of us have top four finishes on both brackets, with Chris winning that females one. I had a lot of fun keeping up with it. I think Brian had more fun and enjoyed it more than he thought he would. Not watching any basketball, but still finishing in second on the men's bracket. It's pretty cool. I didn't write down the percentages, of how we did. Chris had mentioned that he was used to doing like 67, 69% on some of his brackets, despite watching basketball for so long. And to see us up in like the 80s and 90s, I don't know if we just got really lucky this year, or maybe it was more chalk than it usually was, but pretty cool to see us be so successful despite two-thirds of us having never done it before. But Chris, I did want to kind of ask you, as far as being familiar eyes on the bracket challenge, how you thought that this one went for all of us.
Um, I think as people pick their brackets, you can't go crazy and pick like a 15 seed upset or an 8 seed to make the final four, but that actually does happen quite a lot. So what you see is that a lot of people play it safe just based on numbers, and that's how it kind of played out. So you saw like most people in the 80 to 90% range just because there wasn't these never could have seen, never saw it coming upsets. Well, it didn't come, so it didn't knock anyone's down. You didn't have Butler in the championship like you did back in 2010 or something.
Yeah, I thought I think I sent this to Chris and maybe Brian as well. But on ESPN, you can see the celebrity brackets and all their analysts that filled out brackets and everything. And I actually finished higher than Stephen A. Smith, who is supposed to be this all knower of all things ball and gets paid millions upon millions of dollars to talk about it. And here I am filling out a better bracket than him. So maybe ESPN needs to hire me and fire that clown, because I think he's one of the worst personalities in all of sports media, but topic for another day, maybe. Chris, get us onto something else.
Well, we can stay on basketball for a second. The NBA play-in games are starting here April 15th through the 18th. We went over a bit of the seeding in a previous video, and not too much has changed. A little bit here and there, but still kind of the same picture. As a Hawks fan, I'm not really expecting a lot of my own team, but this should be pretty fun to see the other stories play out. I believe Hawks and Magic play here in a couple of days in a one-game series to seed things out. um, and then we get to do the same. We get to have I get to watch all that, have that fun, even if my team's been knocked out of it. And then we'll have the Stanley Cup playoffs going on around the same time, so it's going to be a lot of fun to have those two things going at the same time. And then it's going to be a huge depression for me when they both end, and I got a few things to pad my time though.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the Hawks, and I see they're playing Orlando Magic in the play-in. I did have like a little note on them just because that's obviously the only team that I'm going to follow. I do watch the Lakers play a good bit because I like LeBron James, and seeing him and Luca play together has been pretty exciting. But the note that I saw on the Hawks, and I'm pretty much reading this verbatim from maybe NBA's website. So this is it, my own commentary. I'm not plagiarizing or anything, but it says the Hawks are back in the play-in tournament for the fourth straight season. They failed to advance last year, but did reach the playoffs the previous two times, losing in the first round on both occasions. So, what I wanted to ask you, Chris, is how do you see the Hawks faring against the Magic, and if they do in fact win and make it to the actual playoffs, is this a team that you think could advance past the first round, or do you see another early exit for Atlanta?
I think they're going to beat the Magic, and I believe that would secure the 7 seed. And then, yeah, I got us going down probably 3 games to or 4 games to 1. So It's just a team that there's a little bit of talent there, but you'll go and you'll beat the Nuggets, you'll beat the Warriors, you'll beat the Lakers, you'll beat the Celtics, then you'll just drop the next five. So I don't think there's enough consistency for me to hope that there's going to be any kind of run. And I'm really okay with how things have gone. If we go ahead and get the 7th seed and then go ahead and lose in 5 games, that wouldn't I wouldn't be that let down as a fan. I think that's a realistic expectation, and anything above that is just even better. And I think it's been mentioned. There's no sense in trying to lose because you don't own your draft picks. So just go ahead and put your best effort out there. I sound like a 7-year-old parent right here. Like, just put your best foot out there, and I'll be proud of you no matter what you do. But it is the truth. This team doesn't have a lot to work with, and the fact that they've achieved this much is all right.
Yeah, and it might even be viewed as overachieving at this point because we talked about the Hawks a good bit around the trade deadline and some of the moves that they made then, and it didn't seem like they were gearing up for a playoff run at the time. It seemed like we were shedding some of our better talent, maybe not getting as much in return as you would like, and it did seem like the Hawks were going to miss the playoffs at the time, just purely based off of where they stood and the moves that they were making. It did not seem like they were a playoff team yet here we are with that opportunity. And it might be an unfair comparison, but it's hard not to view Trey Young as similar to like a Dan Marino, and that he's going to be one of the most talented basketball players that we have in Atlanta that's probably never going to win anything. I mean, I feel bad for the guy because you see the efforts there. I think that he's undervalued across the league. He is extremely good. I think if he went to a different market, surrounded by a little bit better talent, I think you could really see him flourish and become one of those even bigger names in the sport than he already is. But it's just hard to really see Atlanta in the current landscape of the Hawks and think that he could bring home a championship, even though I think he is a championship caliber player. It's one of those things that if he does stay his whole career, at least the strong majority of it in Atlanta, he might retire as a player that has a lot of really good statistics, has some really good seasons, is known for those who watched him perform, but doesn't have that NBA championship on his resume and how that might impact his legacy moving forward. And I hope that I'm wrong about that.
Shout out to Charles Barkley, who fits
Yeah.
all of those categories.
Right. Right.
I was
Yeah.
thinking of Matt Ryan from the Falcons when he was saying that has all the stats in the world, but no championship to back it up.
Yeah, and maybe Matt Ryan is the name I should have gone to instead of Dan Marino. Dan Marino is just viewed as being like the best quarterback to never win a championship. And I'm not saying that Trey Young is going to be viewed as the best anything, but similar to Matt Ryan, kind of a long time Atlanta star that never got to uh, hoist that trophy at the end, even though you felt like maybe they were good enough to do so on more than one occasion. So I like that Matt Ryan shout out too.
I
If I'm
figured
not
you would.
mistaken, if I'm not mistaken, James Harden's another good one. Or I'm not sure. Maybe he's won one, but I actually think he hasn't.
I
But
think
he's
so.
had the stats his whole life, the beard, just the intimidate. Like, he's going to be known for a guy that could really get it done. Hopped on a few teams that could have gotten it done too, and then I, God, you guys are going to kill me if this is wrong, but I don't think he's won one. So
When you go back to that Thunder team, OKC had Harden, Durant, and
yeah,
Westbrook and didn't win. And it's kind of like you look at the careers that all three of those guys have had, and for
mhm.
them to not be able to win with the three of them together, I mean, it's almost like a Celtics level uh, triad of great players. And you're like, man, if we could get these three, that would be a super team. We would dominate. It's like they had it of homegrown talent. They got it organically. And all three of those players have gone elsewhere seeking the success that they should have had at OKC and just never really achieved it.
One of them did, but he's a
Right.
snake, and that doesn't count.
That's right. We don't talk about it. uh, Frozen 4, I think you wanted to get on that as well. Chris, did you
Yes, I did. Let's see. We've got Boston University and Western Michigan in the championship tonight. 5 times champs versus first time to the dance. The final dance, at least. I realize that Western Michigan's been in the tournament a few times. Boston last won this in '09. I think I'm gonna check it out, see what happens. As for which way I'm pulling, I don't really know. I've never been to Michigan. I have been to Boston. I enjoyed my trip to Boston. However, I tend to not cheer for any Boston-based sports team. And if I have nothing else to cheer for, usually I cheer for the team that's never won the championship before. None of that's going to change tonight. I want to see Western Michigan win this. Go Broncos.
Yeah, I don't think that I'm going to be watching it. I don't really have a dog in that fight, so to speak. But just in my head, as you were talking about who you were pulling for, I just immediately said, "Oh, it's easily Western Michigan." I don't like the Red Sox. I don't like the Celtics. I don't like the Patriots for obvious reasons. And so it's like, you know what? Give me Western Michigan. They have never done anything to hurt my feelings. So
No.
go Broncos.
Yeah, well, if you want to knock out hockey all in one swoop here, the NHL playoffs are getting started here on April 19th. This is something I've really enjoyed over the last few years. It doesn't hurt, and maybe no coincidence that the Avalanche won it all in 2022. But even still, I find myself watching other series outside my own team. And I guess it's an overused phrase at this point by a lot of people, but playoff hockey is just awesome. I can't wait to watch a lot of that over the next month or so.
Yeah, and didn't I see somewhere recently where the Avs scored a goal in overtime or maybe like a double overtime period, something like that to win. That I saw just the clip of the very end where guy takes it basically straight up center ice and shoots and it goes in. I think the caption might have said, you know, Avs waste no time in winning it in overtime or something like that. But it just seemed you could even from a short clip like that, I mean, maybe a 30-second video, you could just tell how exciting it was in that atmosphere. It was really cool. The whole team came on the ice to celebrate with them. It was just a really cool moment. And you're not even talking about a Stanley Cup experience or anything like that. It was just a game.
Yeah, they've wrapped up a playoff spot. I think it's going to be around fourth. The East has seven of their eight teams set with the Washington Capitals leading the way. The West, last time I checked, this could have changed overnight. The West had five of eight teams set with those pesky Winnipeg Jets leading the way. So a little bit more sorting out to do, but I'll be fully dialed in here on that and the NBA playoffs after WrestleMania.
Yep. Got to get through Mania weekend first. Going to be a weird weekend. It's Easter weekend, and that might actually keep me out of town. So you could see me in a different setup next week if we do another podcast. Also, 420 is Sunday, Easter Sunday for those who partake. It's just gonna a lot going on that weekend. So, but nevertheless, I'm looking forward to WrestleMania. Whether I get to watch it or not, we'll see. I hope I do, but undetermined as of yet. There's been a lot of sickness going on in my household, and so I'm just trying to stay healthy and available. But even if we don't, I'm still looking forward to the draft live stream as well, just to kind of plug that again. Brian, did you have anything else for us that you wanted to talk about?
Just real quick, wanted to touch on MLB and our poor Braves and their very sad season of a 3-10 record that they have right now, and
So
ironically, they are tied for last spot with the Colorado Rockies. So uh, can't feel too bad. We got company, I guess. Um, but what's really crazy looking over the stats is you know on the National League side, the teams seem to be a little all over the place. You've got several that are doing really good, like the Mets. They're 9-4, and then you have uh, the Padres, who are really doing good at 11-3. Um, so they have a very hot start this year. And then you've got the Braves and the Rockies that are kind of pulling up the rear there. Um, but then on the American League side, this is what is kind of weird is all the teams across the board seem to be very, very even. Um, you know, there is another team on the American League side that is doing equally as bad as our poor Braves, and that's the White Sox at 3-10 as well. but the American League seems to be way more even as far as player distribution. And I know Brad had talked about it last week with MLB, not having a salary cap and teams buying dominance. It just seems to that may be true on the National League side and kind of misplaced on the American League side. But again, it's very early in the year. You may see one team just kind of break out and pull away because they do have that bigger budget. It's hard to say on a new season.
Yeah, that
Um,
team is called the Yankees. You'll see.
and I'm not throwing shade at my brother by any means and saying he's wrong in what he said. It just stats, just looking at them, seem that the American League teams are very, very even. And you know, is that more boring baseball or is that better baseball because the teams are even? It's hard to say. I haven't been able to catch a lot of the games. I've watched a couple of the miserable Braves games, and of course they lost on those couple of games that I did watch. I'm much more of a fan of the minor leagues and going to either the Savannah Bananas down there where Chris is at, and that's really it's different if you've ever seen it. Um, or if you like traditional baseball, go find a little minor league, either single A or triple A or whatever's around you, because that's those guys they're not getting paid a lot of money, but they seem to have a lot of fun with what they're doing. So, and they're very, very fan friendly, signing autographs. At the end of the day, you got to remember a lot of those are just, 18, 19, 20-year-old kids, so just starting out in their careers. So they like it. I've met several of them. We have a single A team where I'm at. It's a lot of fun. Been going there for years. Fun to take the family. Brad and I have been to many, many games over there. If I'm not mistaken, you actually worked at that stadium too when you were
Yeah,
younger.
that was one of my first ever jobs. I was an usher for the then Rome Braves, which is the single A affiliate for the Atlanta Braves, and now is the Roman Emperors. So they have changed mascots. They've got a cool penguin that they've got going on now. Uh, but that was kind of one of those things that I was going to touch on was with the Rome Braves at the time. I was seeing Jeff Francoeur and Brian McCann, Jason Hayward came through there. I mean, you never know going to a single A game what that next big star for your franchise is going to be, but you can see them at that and they tend to dominate at that level. And you're like, oh, it's not going to take them long to get called up. So it's kind of a double edged sword because you want to get excited to be able to go and see them. But when they are playing at that level, there's a good chance that they're not going to be around for very long because they get noticed and quickly get moved up through the process and up through the ranks. And we've had a lot of Braves players that got skipped double A, went straight from Rome to like Mississippi or Gwinnett, and they go up to 3A, and then they're in the bigs before long. So pretty cool to see that. And I definitely double down on that notion from Brian that if you do have a single A affiliate next to you, check it out because it's a good opportunity to see maybe your future favorite player at a very young age and cop an autograph before it's going to cost you a good bit of money to secure one. So
Well, even with that, uh, I met John Smoltz at the end of his career. He did some rehab here, and super super nice guy. Just signed autographs until I don't know how his hand didn't cramp up, honestly, because he didn't turn anybody away. He didn't look at do you have the right brand on the baseball that he's signing? Uh, any of that. He just whatever you had, he would sign. I think he signed a couple of golf balls, which if you know Smoltz, he's a extremely talented golfer. And I think there was actually rumors of him participating on the senior PGA at one time. He's at that level. But just can't say enough about that guy. I actually have, let me see if I can move out of the way,
mhm.
his baseball right over this shoulder that is signed. I know Brad has the uh, same baseball where he's at. Like I said, he would just sign anything and everything. So hats off to John Smoltz. If you don't know him, go back and watch some of his play. Great pitcher. I was lucky enough to grow up in that era where they had, you know, Glavin, Smoltz, Maddox, just Ron Gant, all of those players, some of my all-time favorite players. I got to grow up in that first or that worst to first era, and it was a lot of fun watching that. So hopefully we can see that from our Braves. They definitely have the worst tied down right now.
Yeah, think about how many years the planet has been in existence, and you get to watch both John Smoltz and Cam Scatterbo play in your lifetime. I mean, that's just
Oh,
what
Crazy.
what a time to be alive.
amazing.
Good to be a Gen Xer.
That's right.
Speaking of salary cap, just throw this in there. I know the Tennessee Volunteers are having a little trouble with their salary cap with their quarterback situation. I was gonna say I hope they figure that out, but I really don't because I don't care for them. So if you guys don't know about that story, their starting quarterback Nico Nico
I-Am-A-Leava.
Okay, I-Am-A-Leava. Um, he wants a increase in pay. It's all bullshit, to be honest, and they're not going to give it to him, and I don't think anyone else is going to give it to him. It's just a funny situation they're in where he's kind of holding Tennessee hostage. We're talking about college football here, so stupid stuff there. But
Yeah, I think if
Brad,
you told somebody 10 years ago that the story would be a college quarterback is holding out for a new contract, you would probably just blow their mind by
yeah,
that.
it's nonsense. But Brad, I did have one more thing. I actually was talking to you about this in a text message a few days ago. You said save it for the podcast, so I'm going to go ahead and throw this out there. I think it's the last thing we have, really. Um, is it possible that AEW, which if you guys don't know, is another wrestling promotion, probably one step under the WWE, but they put out some good stuff. Maybe I would argue a step above TNA, so in that kind of range. Um, are they simply not trying because they know they can't compete with WrestleMania coming up and the lead to it? And is that a terrible idea if that's true? This is actually some of the worst effort stuff I've seen. There's still some good stuff, don't get me wrong. This is some of the worst stuff I've seen from them in about 5 years. And before I let you throw your thoughts in there, I just want to say that I actually hope that that's what's happening because if not, this is kind of real shit. Like you have talent, but you put out below average products each week, not unlike the Jacksonville Jaguars themselves. It's almost like there's a connection there.
And there
So, Brad, what
is.
do you think? Are they kind of taking their foot off the gas because they know that no matter what they put out there, it's going to be overshadowed?
I want to say no. And the reason why is because this isn't like a football situation. You don't have seasons in wrestling. There is no off season where they take a few months and then they come back, a little while later. They have to constantly be planning. They have to constantly be maneuvering injuries and just different availabilities, contracts, and stuff like that. It is a forever evolving thing when you deal with pro wrestling. And so, whereas you could say, hey, we know everybody's going to watch WWE, so they're not going to watch us. I don't think that's true. There's a number of hours in the week, and WWE is only going to take up so many of those. But right now, you have more eyes on wrestling than you do at any other point of the year. You see people tune in around Royal Rumble, and then they plug into wrestling through WrestleMania.
Mhm.
AEW and really every wrestling company that can get eyes on their product need to be putting their best foot forward this time of year to try to earn those weekly viewers for the rest of the year. Because if you can't earn those viewers in April, they're not going to magically show up in July either. They're not going to come in August or September when football shows up, when, baseball season starting to get interesting, in their race for October. This is the time for wrestling to shine. People that don't have football to watch, they're going to be. I mean, think about it. You, AEW has a Saturday show called Collision.
Mhm.
How many times during the months of football season did you watch Collision?
Oh, you're not taking me away from college football.
Right. Okay.
Uh,
But now that there's not college football going on a Saturday, would you say that you're more apt to tune into a wrestling show on a random Saturday when you're flipping through channels looking for something to watch? Maybe you'd watch it now just because you're a little bit more invested in wrestling. I think that's safe to assume that even if you didn't, some people would. And so if AEW is just phoning it in, I think they're making a monumental mistake. And I'm kind of siding with on the opposite side from what you said. I hope
Mhm.
they're not phoning it in. I think maybe they're just having some lulls of, hey, we have to constantly be coming up with new creative plans. We're going to throw stuff out there, see what works, see what doesn't. Some of that stuff is going to hit with fans and some of it isn't. And
Yeah.
maybe, better shows are around the corner. But I do think it would be a huge mistake to phone it in just because WrestleMania is happening. People can watch both.
Yeah, and just to feed off that, some of the things going on right now, like John Moxley is the champion with the Death Riders thing going on. That's been voted as the worst storyline going on right now by some people. Yeah, Danny Garcia was the TNT champion up until recently. I think he's super vanilla, and hopefully Adam Cole, Bebe, can fix that. Tony Storm is fantastic and the best women's wrestling gimmick of the last 5 years, despite what Brad tells you. But she's built up such a huge name for herself and star level that it's almost you can't believe any of the challengers coming along to face her. Like you got some good talent, but they're not like built up on the level that she is. Now, on a more positive note, I do see everything turning around a little bit after All In, which has become somewhat their equivalent to WrestleMania in recent years after the huge London show a few years back. So I think we'll see Will Ospreay becoming the new world champion at that time, and everything going in a new positive direction from there. That's the hope, at least.
I think the biggest thing that AEW could do is put the strap back on MJF.
Oh,
Uh, we'll get into our favorites here in the near future, kind of a teaser for anybody still watching. But MJF is a big favorite of mine, and nobody is on the level of the devil. And if you want to win, we need that Triple B back on weekly TV. If you know, you know.
that's right. And like Brad said, we've got some some other wrestling content coming out shortly after you see this one posted. So be on the lookout for that. It's coming very soon if you're watching this as it airs.
Yeah, so that was kind of what we had for this week, guys. I appreciate y'all joining me for another episode of the podcast. Got 12 in the books. I'm already looking forward to the next 12 and all the sporting events that are going to be happening in the meantime for us to talk about. But thank you again, everybody watching. Tune in to our wrestling videos if you're into that sort of thing. And if you're not into it, watch it anyways, just because we need the watch time.
And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.
Yeah, and join us for